The way I put it is that I think Astray is good enough to beat Neeb, but it's like the world championship belt. You might be the player like good enough that you could beat the person who holds the world championship belt, but you don't get the world championship belt until you beat the person holding it. That's how I feel about Astray. Like he still has to do it.
I'm pretty sure you don't get the championship belt until the organization writes the story that gives you the championship belt.
Well, no, there's in like boxing and stuff. There's a literal belt that you just get if you beat them.
But whenever I think of belt, you know, I think of like fake wrestling.
Okay. Oh, okay. You're going wrestling. I'm thinking boxing. Okay.
Yeah, which is a much better story. But for me, I'm just like, okay, so someone's gonna write the novel here of Estrella finally beating me. Yep.
All right. Well, we doing player intros?
Yes, we are. Thank you, Mr. Yates, for the Tier 1 sub. We're on Death Or for game number 1 of this best-of-5 qualifying match. In the top left is the Red Protoss. He is Root Robbie.
Captain, we are being
Robbie Plata. And down in the bottom right-hand side of the map, we have the blue Zerg player from Psystorm Gaming. He is JonSnow, as that is his official nickname ever since he started working.
He's still putting in some serious work in Starcraft, though.
Yeah.
Still can really clutch out a game, that's for sure. And still the gatekeeper, man.
I've talked with him a little bit about this, like, and it makes me so happy because I felt like I predicted this. I told him that this is gonna happen. So when you start a new job, there's like the carryover effect. This happens with retirement with players a lot, right? Where you retire from full time and then somehow there's like less pressure, but you still have all your old skills, so you actually still do really well. So JonSnow was still really good after he went full time into like his normal job for like a month or two, and then he started falling off. But that's when you start to adjust after like 4 or 5 months, and you're like, oh, actually, like I now know how to manage my time with a full-time job. Like I know how to adjust. I know how to like make Starcraft stuff work. And he's actually getting back a little bit further into form.
Well, you know what's amazing is that it's not just the expectation of, you know, understandably having less time when you get a job or you get a career, whatever, family, kids, I don't know. It's also just that you think the interest would also disappear. That they'd be like, well, I don't really want to have an 8-hour job and then also play 4 hours of StarCraft. Like, yeah. I think that's very understandable, so I wouldn't have blamed him. But it's pretty amazing because I also thought JonSnow is always, you know, obviously all these guys are passionate. Whenever we talk about passion, we're talking about like a baseline passion that is still pretty extreme. To be a professional in StarCraft 2 is actually just a crazy thing. You're actually a crazy person. But when we're talking about the differences of passion, we're talking about, you know, the difference of like Joe Schmo versus Beyond, who plays 16 hours a day, and that's like his thing. So for me, it feels like JonSnow, obviously passionate. I would never have been like, yeah, this guy just fucking loves StarCraft. Like, oh yeah, he's not going anywhere. You know, I really thought he was gonna just go to do a job and have a normal life thing.
Yeah, I actually thought something similar. I thought he would just kind of play for fun a little bit on the side, which I think he did sort of do for a little bit, but it makes me really happy. Like, if JonSnow never leaves StarCraft and is just always kind of somewhat there, like, I will be so happy, even if he's not necessarily at the top, because he really is just a super enjoyable person to have. Talking about this game really quickly. So, funny enough, we could talk about Rob also a little bit and how he's in the same field and stuff as JonSnow. They're both those software dev types, but we do have, of course, a nice little gateway opening over here with 4 gates. Resonant Glaze being chrono boosted out. Warp Prison going to be popping on out, so Mr. Robbie Plata going to be going across the map with a big old Adept play here. And JonSnow got a Zergling in. He saw most of this.
He actually didn't see enough, though. So his Overlord died just short.
Oh my god,
just
you're
short,
right.
But fairly short, and then his Ling almost got in with the help of regen, and it didn't quite. So he didn't see the setup at all. So he knows it's not a Stargate, because the Oracle timing's already passed. But otherwise, he has no idea. He also would have seen 2 gases. It was a Stargate, and like, yeah, he's boiling it down to either it's Adept, DT, or Archon drop, right? Of like any DT or High Templar. What's in the meta right now, Fear Dragon? It's the Adept thing. So if you have to guess, I would guess Adepts. Unfortunately, JonSnow might be guessing a little bit too late. His Roach Warren's only halfway done. A decent number of Lings, but that's a tough start.
Yeah, well, Queens get an opportunity to hit the Warp Prism. They're actually just going to go after one of the Adepts. He focus fires on that instead. The Spine Crawler not exactly in a super helpful spot right now either. I'd love to see that moved over to one of the mineral lines. Queens are getting in range again of that Warp Prism. They managed to snipe off one Adept instead, though. It's kind of interesting. He's not really focusing on just shutting this down hard. It is kind of the riskier play to go for the Warp Prism, but if you get it, like the push is over.
Yeah, I think that he should be target firing it. Lings do get a decent wraparound on those Adepts, but good control from Robbie to micro those back, and he's going to go for the Warp, and that is extremely dangerous to the Queens. Aren't focus firing the Warp Prism! No,
oh my God.
missed opportunity!
Yeah, okay, he gets it. He does manage to kill it off, though. There are still a few Adepts alive, and 5 drones have already ended up falling over here. A lot more are going to fall down in the main base because there's barely any units over here. JonSnow decides now is the time to start my lair. As the Roaches are defending decently, he's going to end up losing 11, maybe 12 workers. I think he might end up losing 2 or 3 more, maybe with his final shade, but I think JonSnow, oh God, he took a little bit too much damage here, right? Like, oh, okay, well, now he took too much damage.
Yeah, it's always tough to call in these situations, but yeah, I think so. He will have definitely a moment here to just drone, but unless his counter can actually snipe an Immortal or stop probe production, kill these probes in the third, yeah, he lost too much. He got so close to actually holding it despite being late to the hold. That was pretty impressive. But these Lings, I mean, they actually are finding all those things I was talking about. Hopefully they get the probes and you get a sentry. Force will end up just being a little bit too good. Oh, no.
Oh, the micro! Robbie Plata keeps the sentry alive just in time. Now that the shield batteries are there, those any other Lings that come across the map are not going to do anything. JonSnow goes straight back into droning, but even with the 7 drones on the way, he's just going to be tied in worker counts. And he still is eventually going to have to replenish some of the army supply because he did end up losing a couple of Roaches there, and he just lost all of the Lings with that counterattack. So he doesn't have an army anymore.
Yeah. He's going to have to take the risk. Drone really hard, get a 4th base as a priority, and then at the very last second, go back into Roaches. And it's a risk that Zergs are familiar with, but they hope to be in a bit of a better situation than now. He was awfully close to defending it with a subpar number of Roaches, but losing... If he had lost 10, I'm like, all right, they ended up losing 16 drones, and that was just a little bit too much, especially because Robbie wasn't committing much more. He didn't just lose that Warp Prism and go like, oh my god, everything was all in on this. He had a 3rd Nexus. He was building Immortals. So that was a pretty bad thing for JonSnow to have happen to him. And then a Scout on the partially saturated Nexus, like, not a great thing for him to see. But I think there is a recovery process. I think he's already starting his road to recovery. 65 drones, 4 bases. He's going to have to be helped out, I think, by a couple of lucky corrosive bios.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. And actually, funny enough, there should be an attack usually from the Protoss player to follow this up. And actually, as I say, there is going to be that move out over there from Rob, and he does have another Warp Prism there. And here's actually something I was going to say. JonSnow stylistically tends to do. He's actually not a very tech-heavy player. He's the player that usually will sit around on lower tech units. So that actually did give me hope that, yeah, he's going to have a bunch of Ravagers being made. He's not going to usually be the player that says, I'm going to play greedy by teching really quickly up to Lurkers or something. Like, he's going to just power out a lot of Roaches and Ravagers. And Magic can happen with that.
Yeah, we should point out that a lot of Robbie's supply are in Adepts, which can sometimes not be as good as a bunch of charge lots or a handful of Link Stalkers, right? Yeah, I mean, it can work, though. Like, he's going to shade on top of these units, you know, so they can't retreat, they can't micro, but we'll see what happens. Equal supplies right now, with Robbie a bit in the lead. Not a good sign for a Reserve player.
Yeah, a couple of transfusions are available on these Queens, but we're just starting to see that Rob is starting to make a lot of progress over here. And remember, all the drones are over here as well, so now finally they're going to start coming to the crossfire. I really like how these Crucibles have been landing on a lot of the Adepts, but it just feels like Airly doesn't have enough. He doesn't get the Immortal. I think it's sitting on like 1 hit point right now. And JonSnow, he's been backed into a corner. He's going to end up losing his final Ravagers here, and I'm with you, ZombieGrub. I don't know that there's much recovery anymore.
There really isn't. You know, the second thing about Adepts is that they stop you from microing. Those Ravagers got the extra range. Sometimes they can really work out well, but they instead just die to the Adepts jumping on top of them. JonSnow not going to give up, but if he was going to lose 20 drones, that ideally would have been with the first push, helping the first defense, not as he slowly bleeds out. Robbie's 1-2 punch, just a little bit too good.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't fault JonSnow for also sticking around in here. Rob is actually one of those somewhat momentum-based players, so I like the idea of just trying to tilt him a little bit if he throws. Well, that's definitely going to pay off in game 2, but there it is. GG. Rob takes game number 1. Himself up in a good spot for this best of 5.
Mm-hmm. That was a rather late response from JonSnow, though. I think when the gears were starting to turn in his brain, they turned a little bit too slowly to finally click onto Adepts, because he had to think about all the options. If they had been a little bit quicker, the Roaches are out a little bit quicker, he actually got some decent potential against the Adepts. He got some decent Link surrounds. He got, the Queen top of the Warp Prism, obviously. And, if he just stopped that extra warping of Adepts, honestly, he was supposed to. The Queen's just firing.
It's, what actually was really painful there too is either he was misclicking with his focus fire, or he was intentionally focus firing down Adepts, assuming he wouldn't be able to get the Prism, because his Queen DPS wasn't spread out across the Adepts. If he was just A-moving, it would have been spread out and been hitting 4 different Adepts or something with how his Queens were positioned. He was focused targeting down a singular Adept there each time. So I do feel like it was either a big miss micro, or a misclick, or it was an intentional decision. Maybe because he just assumes every time I try to go for the Prism, it never works out, and I just lose my Queens and lose the game or something.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a good thing to point out for sure. He wasn't just derping. There was some thought behind it, but I would say there was one time that he maybe could have done some serious damage, but I understand he didn't overcommit. I think that was the first time we kind of were like, oh, he could have gotten it. I think that's the type of thing where you overcommit, 20 games over, and you're like, never again. The second time when it was back into that corner, that was a straight up mistake. He could have gotten it.
No, I'm definitely with you. And especially it's also just the fact that if you do damage and you don't kill it, the Warp Prism has to back off. So it can't do the aggressive warping in your face during the middle of the fight as easily anymore, because now it's at a lower hit points. That second opportunity means that, well, there's a higher chance I'm actually just going to kill it this time. So you have to play safer with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think these are all things he'll be able to be better prepared for, because he's going to be kind of reminded, honestly, all right, Adepts, okay. So he's going to be mentally prepared and perhaps actually in-game prepared a little bit more. So I think it's going to be up to the Protoss to change things up, or at the very least change up how he used those Adepts. We're on Pillars of Gold for game number 2. In the top right, down 1, it is JonSnow.
Look at you, introducing players every game in the series. How the circles have circled. We're gonna be starting down here in the over here on the bottom left-hand side of the map now, on top of the red Protoss player from Root Gaming. He is a Root Rob.
I do it most of the time, but much more casually after the first game. Just in case someone's not watching and just listening. They have some
the thoughtfulness. Yeah, you're just thinking about the fact that with a live format, anyone could tune in for the series at any given moment. I like that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, Chicken Man was like, oh, that's what I do. Or I listen when I'm at work, and I was like, oh, all right, Chicken Man, I'll do it for you. And then I was listening to you guys for one of the weekend broadcasts for DreamHack. And I was in my car listening to it because I was going to cast the next day. It was literally the semifinals. So I was like, I should actually watch these. And so I spent an hour or 2 in my car overall listening to you guys and being I remember in one particular point I was like, what fucking map is this? They keep on saying things that describe many maps. They never actually say the map.
I know exactly what you mean, because the way I used to indulge and engage in most Starcraft ever since 2012 was I would have it audio only coming in from my phone through my headphones while I was at work, and I couldn't pull up video and everything the entire time. So I actually used to cater a lot of my casting style to be very audio cast friendly, just naturally, because I was like, well, this is what I want from a cast.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny how those things kind of get to you when you're like, oh, I know how they feel now.
Yeah. It'd be crazy if we ever get to a point where radio broadcasts are actually requested, but
yeah, we just returned to it. Oh my god, imagine they give us 2 sets of commentators for all the premiere events and everything, but one of them is a radio cast.
That'd be so weird. Oh, when StarCraft is making, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, they're gonna have a radio cast and a newbie cast. And every one of us will be nonstop work.
Oh yeah, there'll be no breaks. But let me ask you, ZombieGrub, would it be an insult to be put on the radio cast? Because they're like, you got a good face for radio. It's just like, ooh.
If they put me on the newbie cast or the radio cast, I don't care what the reason is.
Hey, I'll take the newbie cast. The newbie cast actually I think sounds fun.
It might be fun, but it's definitely less prestigious. They are saying to you that you are not the main guys. 100%.
Or they're also saying to you that you're so good at explaining things that we want you to be the representative for the brand in the game to people who are not familiar with Starcraft.
That's why I said I don't care what their excuse is.
Fair enough.
What they're saying is you're not the main guys.
All right, well, talking about this game, because it is finally getting to that beautiful point in PvZ where the builds have shaped out and we kind of have a sense of what they're going to be up to. Rob is definitely going for that good old 4-gate DT drop, which could eventually turn to that Archon drop as well. JonSnow sees the Robo, but he has an Overlord heading over into the main base, and yeah, he's seeing the Dark Shrine. This is definitely the scout that you want, but now it's going to be up to control for both players.
He should have already been a little bit clued in, just with the gases coming down when they did. It wasn't a Stargate because there was a Robo, and then it wasn't the Adepts of last game because the gases came down faster. But you know what's better than that? Just getting a good old scout in the main, 100%.
Yeah, just confirming it, 100%. So Sport Callers already get started on up. JonSnow has Queen's position over the third base, which is usually the third base and then main base that are the most vulnerable. So he's going to have a nice little spread out of defense. He's got some Link sitting over by the natural as well. And yeah, there's no way the DTs are going to be able to break into the Sport Caller. Transfuse not really able to be used there to save that Queen, so he managed to get 2 of them.
Yeah, no buffer for the Queens, no additional DPS for the Queens. Just Queens. Maybe not the best. A second War Prism was made.
Ooh.
A little bit tricky. This was coming into play shortly after the introduction of this build, but JonSnow, I guess he knows about it. He's already prepared.
Yeah, well, the DTs are still getting a surprising amount of damage done, although one DT looks like it has fallen, and the War Prism is actually now pretty low on hit points, so.
You wanted that Queen, man.
He really did. I mean, think about it. If you get that Queen, there's 1 Queen left at this base, and all you have to do is warp in a few more DTs, and then you just get to right-click down the Spore. The War Prism gets free reign. It's great.
Mm-hmm. And even if the War Prism dies, there's a second War Prism that was joining up with it, so we're gonna have quadruple Archon drop.
This is you were talking about this. This was like the meme build, and I don't know who first came up with it, and I don't necessarily credit Hearthstone as having invented it, but I credit Hearthstone with having brought it to the forefront, because he's the player that I think of that was talking a lot about this 4 Archon drop. And it's just scary. It's scary how much micro potential there is and how difficult this can be to hold against a really, really good Protoss player.
Well, I feel like JonSnow is in a really good job knowing about the second War Prism. I don't know if his Overlord is still there, saw it pop out, or just he knows how Robbie plays. And I feel like he's doing a decent enough job against this. He knows to respect it, so he pulls back, waits for 6 more roaches. But yeah, he knows to respect it, and that should be enough.
Yeah, well, a little bit of micro coming out over here. It's pretty tough, honestly, to micro both of the War Prisms. But okay, he's trying to do the really, really fancy style or version of this micro where you are trying to dodge some of the shots, but roaches attack really quick. Look at that pick up and drop micro. And just snag the Overseer there.
I want to point out that JonSnow tried to like body block with the changelings against the Archons.
Okay, War Prism, you don't want to get too far away from those Archons. That's not something you want to do.
Dangerous game, dangerous game. But it's not something you can really not defend against. I mean, it'd be so tempting to go across the map and be like, we just dedicated 8, actually 9 DTs, because he lost one, to this. Can I just go across the map and kill you? Maybe. There's so little defending these immortals, it might have been possible. But then you're going to take a lot of damage from the Archons, so... Robbie's kind of getting away with this, but I hope that he's not too fancy for his own good. He's building up an army.
I actually take comfort in the fact that he is macroing a bit behind this. Like, he's got his Robo Bay coming up. The part of the reason he only has so few immortals right now is because he was getting up his second Robo as well, and starting up his forges, getting up Blink and everything. So I actually feel like while there have been a few points like right now that I think he did slip on macro a little bit, he built up like 1,000 minerals. He gets that big warp in because all of his gateways are now finishing up. So I think he's actually doing pretty well for this.
I hope he recognizes that JonSnow isn't really going for a 4th base. Like, he's getting it, but he's going to go ahead and push. Because I don't like the size of his army right now. I like the double pumped Immortals, and now we have Disruptors on the way, but I would love a couple of shield batteries.
Yeah, he really needed a shield battery at his start. He has one that's kind of far back in the mineral line, and I guess he can overcharge that. Warp Prisms do manage to survive. He might even want to recall those Archons back home. Like, I know that they could do some damage on this side of the map, but he needs all of his focus and micro over on this side.
Yeah, he actually lost one Archon, and if he had lost more of them, would have been really scared, but he's bringing it back home, not through a recall. The dude is bringing it back home. Going to capture the backside, maybe some Ravagers. A couple of Immortal Shields got popped. JonSnow is trying to make something work, and he is just rallying forward with a lot more Roaches, but looks like Robbie's going to hold. A little bit of the Sim City, the choke on his side, and the blink and finishing up for all of the Stalkers he now has. He now has an insane number of Stalkers. That's now scary to a pure Roach army that JonSnow has.
Yeah, and with double Disruptor production also coming on out, this is really, really going to depend a lot on JonSnow, making sure he does not just let all of his units bunch up against those big Disruptor shots. Because, again, like, JonSnow, when I think of him, I don't think of, like, high-tech Zerg armies. He is kind of the guy that sticks around on Roaches and Ravagers for a lot longer than most other Zerg players these days. And I feel like then he almost has, like, a switch that gets flipped. Is he'll finally decide, okay, now I'll just go straight up to Broodlords, and he just tries to jump through the tech. But if he's playing from an even game, that usually doesn't work out very well.
Ooh, not a good idea. Going
Very
for
bold.
the multitasking there. He wanted to push with the Archon and Zealots in the main, but JonSnow was a little too on top of that idea. It is still a scary army from Robbie. He's going to have Blink Stalkers and upwards numbers of like 30. I mean, he doesn't have a Warp Prism with his army, though, so I guess actually that's a little bit weird. But we'll see what his army can do, and we'll see what his harassment can do. His army just gets a quick cancel on a 5th. Warp Prism in the main barely survives. Warp Prism in the natural barely alive. Stupid Warp Prisms.
Oh my god. Oh, okay. It's in a very dangerous spot. You need to recall immediately. Oh my god, he ran into the Spore Crawler.
Yeah, not really an exit path for that one. This one is still alive, though, and could provide some very important Zealot or DT warp-ins, even off to the side, into the 4th base would still be very nice, as JonSnow sends everything across the map. But it feels like JonSnow, I don't think he can defeat Robbie's army with pure Roaches. He does need to hope the Banelings collapse in on the Disruptors, which, that's going to be the Disruptors' weaknesses. Like, Disruptors actually aren't that common in PvZ, because they actually do far worse than Force Fields or Storms or more Archons when it comes to dealing with the suddenness of Banelings. They just suddenly pop up and they're dead, and Disruptors go, oh, I didn't even get my shot off.
Yeah, you need like 5 seconds of advance notice that the Banelings are coming in, and then to be able to line up the shots. Banelings move quickly once you get Baneling speed, I mean, and that is going to be finishing up pretty soon for JonSnow, thankfully. But yeah, I feel like this is that time period where when you start getting into like those large Baneling counts, I really, really want to see some kind of transition point for the Protoss player. But GTs go for a right click on the lair. They're not really going to be able to find it, and the cancel on the warp in does halt things out. At least the Warp Prism stays alive, and okay, I think that Rob is doing exactly what you were talking about before. He's trying to force an engagement during all this repeated Warp Prism harassment.
JonSnow has set up a surround. It's going to be really difficult for the Disruptors. The first one's going to get a decent shot on the Ravagers, but how about on the backside? Another split from JonSnow going to try and save the day. He has corralled the Protoss army into a corner. Disruptors, are you going to do it, or is it just the number of Blink Stalkers that are really doing it?
I think it's a combination of both. Remember, massive chunks of JonSnow's army are just not attacking every time he has to move them away from these Disruptor shots. And I actually think the Stalkers were able to just get the damage done during that time. Like, the Disruptor shots, honestly, like, he killed a bunch of his own units with some of those shots, but it still ended up working out.
I think JonSnow needed more Lings. The Lings are really going to complicate an army like this. They're going to make the Disruptors derp around. They're not going to be... Stalkers, rather, are not going to be that great against the Lings, but I wish they had an upgrade. They're just shy of that +1 Carapace. So many of them jump on top of the army, but it's not a full surround, so Robbie just blinks backwards and backwards and backwards. No Warp Prism necessary for this push. He's just rallying from back at home, but JonSnow can't actually beat it.
Yeah, I think even just having one Disruptor still alive, the 2 Immortals as a backbone for this makes it so tough for JonSnow to actually push this back. Rob is already sitting up 1-0. You go up 2-0 in a best of 5 in a qualifying match. That is not a fun place to be. Even eating a couple corrosive bottles there, I don't think it's going to be able to make the difference here. He's trying to morph in a bunch of Banelings, and a handful of them are going to get canceled. There's 4 down.
JonSnow knows about Robbie's 4th base. This isn't really all in. It's also so flexible. The Stalkers could stay here while the other army goes away, which is kind of what his plan was. He has her to run low on Disruptors. He really is just relying on these +2 Stalkers. They're once again going to get surrounded, but Blink is going to temporarily save them. They do not save the Immortals' lives. Disruptor shot! Only gets a Ravager. Surprisingly.
Yeah, JonSnow's definitely stepping up his game on those splits for sure.
Yeah, DTs are in the 4th base of JonSnow, though. He just lost his 4th. This is actually his 5th. It was maybe going to be what brings him back into this game, but DTs are on it. And it's hard to actually collect these Stalkers. I think if he had more Lings in the first engagement or more Banelings in the second and actually got a surround, then we're talking, right? Like, this army of Robbie is not as strong as he's making it look. But he is making you look strong. He's making Stalkers, pure Stalkers at this point, look very strong.
Yeah, he only loses 1 or 2 Stalkers there, but he gets a lot of those Banelings. Infestors are potentially going to be able to change some of the tide for how these fights are going. But like you said, that base, the top left-hand side, was so important for JonSnow to keep alive. If he had kept that base alive and he got these Infestors out, fungal growth down these Stalkers so they couldn't blink away or move, I would feel so much better about this for JonSnow. I actually feel like he would be able to do something big here because Rob isn't exactly transitioning out in any way, but now JonSnow's losing a bunch of drones to those DTs. And one of his few mining bases. What's the transition here? How do you make this work?
Well, you get your 4 bases back up, and then you GG.
There you go. Oh man, Rob taking a 2-0 lead in this best of 5. That's match point now. Rob is 1 game away from knocking JonSnow out.
He's been looking very good in this tournament. I mean, I only cast his first series, which was against... Had he gotten 3-0'd by JonSnow, I'd be like, I would have expected a better fight, but okay. But instead, he's 3-0ing JonSnow, making it look a bit easy. And took down Vindicta as well. Yeah.
And he has actually been going really hard on the ladder. That's one thing I've definitely noticed because he's in ladder heroes and everything. He's one of the players that has like 900 games played this season and stuff. Like he's been a madman on that, which is really impressive because I know he's also, got all that work and stuff he's got to worry about as well. So really, really kudos to Rob. He has definitely been coming up. Even though I feel I actually say all this and I say I didn't actually expect that Rob would be playing this well today because I actually don't think his MMR has been boosting up as much as I would say like his skill today has been reflecting.
Maybe he's secretly a performer in tournaments. He just he hasn't gotten there yet. And now it's the time to shine, man.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I feel like usually it used to be a little bit the opposite because in tournaments, I feel like he would psych himself out and try and play really, really cute or do really crazy stuff like that 4 Archon Warp Prism drop in the last game. And he would just kind of like in the tournament pressure setting completely botch it and would get super duper hard shut down in the tournament. But I feel like, yeah, he's playing a lot better. He's not getting those nerves as bad as he used to.
Robbie was always a guy who I was like, yeah, he's good. He's just nothing spectacular, but also no glaring faults. And today he's actually like, I don't know, maybe looking at parting replays, he's like, oh man, yeah, Blink Star, yeah, this is my jam. Maybe he just has found a nice groove, but he is looking quite good. In the bottom left, looking a bit stumped after the first 2 games, it is the Blue Zerg, JonSnow.
And up here in the top right-hand side of the map at match point is the red Protoss player, Roots Rob. Formerly known as Tesla, by the way, for those who used to see that name running around. I think actually there's a surprising number of people who don't know that he is the same player that was Tesla.
I have absolutely forgotten. I knew at the time, whenever it was, and then I've just completely forgotten that Tesla was even a name.
I actually thought Tesla was a great name. And it's like, I'm not usually a fan of people renaming in general. But like, especially that one, I was like, dude, you finally started getting results as Tesla. Just stick with it, man. There's no need to change. And the irony was he changed it from Rob to Tesla and back to Rob.
I don't know what it is about that, but it feels like at one point we were kind of having this like funny discussion. It's obviously not very serious, but I remember being on a Pylon show a year and a half, 2 years ago, one of the earlier ones, I suppose. And us kind of discussing about why are you guys changing your names? In Control of this big rant about like branding, right? And like how that actually hurts you in the long run, and he had to learn it, right? And it was actually only 2 years ago, but it feels like it was forever ago.
Yeah, it really does.
Ultimately, it doesn't actually affect much because, like, obviously these guys aren't really getting sponsorship deals. But yeah, I remember the time it was like, stop it, everyone! Why are you doing this?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I agree. Like, it's not necessarily the end of the world, but to me, like, I feel as though Rob finally started getting his first, like, kind of bigger results, at least for him, at the time that he named himself Tesla. So he was Rob. He changed to Tesla. He started getting results in the sense that he was, like, qualifying for Challenger and actually taking maps off of, like, good players and stuff. And then he changed it back to Rob. And I'm like, you changed your name to, like, finally get results and then changed it back. Why? Like, that's actually the worst way you could do it.
It is, yeah. We got another Robo Twilight Council pairing coming out here. No Stargates for Robbie.
This
And
time it's Blink.
yeah, right. He's gonna do the 2 base +1 blink, or not even +1, just like literally just 2 base blink.
He's been talking with Hitman, and Hitman playing Starcraft 2 on this. Oh, he had it Resident Glaive starting, and then he canceled it.
To build another Adept? Wait.
Okay. I think it was just a build order thing. He wanted to get the gateways up first, I guess.
I thought it was the gas that ended up being. You're right, though. We put another gateway down. So yeah. Anyways, yeah, it is Resident Glaives. I thought maybe there was like a Ling he was like trying to warp in, but he's not even got warp gate yet. And it's the 4-gate version again, so very similar to the first map. I'm fine with this. I think it is a good enough build that you can do it multiple times in a series. I just want to see it back to back to back. Speaking of warping in to defend his wall, this actually needs to happen. Robbie! No warp-ins. Actually, I thought he would have had another warp-in.
Oh, actually, yeah,
Wait,
there it
what?
is. It was up in the name.
The Stalker's gonna live? No. Okay.
Okay. The Stalker dies, but honestly, like, that's still really, really good for Rob. Like, that many Lings being made that early on, and suicided in right before you're about to hit or be hit with a 4-gate Adept pressure, like, it's the dream. That's the dream for the Protoss right there.
Yeah, I'll take the loss of the Stalker and the scouting on the Adepts. He was probably very likely that JonSnow was already predicting this was going to be the build, but then he just made a bunch of Lings to only get a Stalker. Yeah, I would take that as well. JonSnow knows he needs a certain amount of drones to consistently pump out units, so he kind of builds like 2 or 3 more, and is now going to go all the way back into army production, but first and foremost with Lings, because his Roach Warren, just like that first game, is just a little bit too late for me to feel comfortable.
Yeah, I do think actually one thing that's going to help out a little bit is that the Spine Crawler is actually over here. So it does buy a bit of time. It softens up one of the Adepts. Oh, God, but he ends up losing the Spine Crawler so early on over here. Queen also pops out right in range of a lot of these Adepts, and now the Adepts are in the beautiful mineral line choke point that the Lings do not want to engage into.
Yeah. Queens couldn't really jump on top of that War Prisms. They were being blocked out by the Adepts and their own hatchery. It's so tempting, and there's so many Queens to do it, but this is really not ideal. None of these Lings are getting actual surrounds on the Adepts. The Adepts don't even have to be microed, although they could be. This is so far pretty bad, because again, behind this, Robbie just immediately planted down a 3rd base. Imagine the 12 Lings have been alive and we're canceling that. It feels so much better. Instead, it's a 3rd Nexus and barely saving a 3rd hatchery.
Yeah, the trick is in the last second. It's as the Adept Shades were about to finish up. Like, he thought he was going to kill the hatchery and shade away, but he instead just doesn't end up killing it for now. That's the main base. Going to be able to kill off a lot of Lings. I mean, he hasn't actually gotten too many drones just yet. Only 4 of them, and a few have turned into buildings. There's going to be that follow-up to the Dark Shrine halfway done. But, man, I feel like this attack is going to be cleaned up, and usually that's when the Zerg player has the opportunity to be like, okay, it's finally done. And then they have that moment where they're like, what happens next? Oh, Spore Crawlers. I feel like if you are able to keep the Adepts alive until the Dark Templars pop out, you're like, there's got to be some stat out there where it's like, DTs are 40% more effective if the Adepts are alive as the Dark Shrine finishes.
Dark Shrine was not scouted. He was in the 3rd base.
Oh, man. He didn't get it.
Or, sorry, in the natural, rather. It was in the natural, and the main is being scouted. The natural is not. Overlord in the main, no Spore Crawler, no Lair. That's game.
That's, yeah, getting riggedy rolled right there. He cleans up the Adepts and keeps that 3rd hatchery alive. He's only lost 2 drones so far, but it is going to be just that problem that, yeah, with no Lair or Spores, there's nothing actually protecting this in the main. You know, at the same time, though, one DT only working away at that hatchery in the main, and the other DTs were body blocked by the roaches. It's not a good spot right now for JonSnow. But I actually see a world where these DTs, yeah, they just get cleaned up over the third base. I can see JonSnow bounce back from this.
Maybe. It was not as catastrophic as it should have been, but it's still not great because the entire time the main was not mining, and he has been down in drones until literally just now. He's still down in drones, just got a little bit closer. So his economy's really been shot, and Robbie has been basically fully saturated. Doesn't need any more probes, and he's a little supply blocked right now, but he's been fully saturated. All he needs to do is get his production, and then it's going to be that same explosion that we saw in the first game, where it was like, well, that's not a very big army. I'm a little scared, and suddenly it's a very big army. And in this game, even like JonSnow doesn't even have an army to push across the map. It doesn't even exist.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. Well, JonSnow's got a tough job over here, and there's actually still a DT that's sitting up on that high ground. Maybe the Overseer will catch wind of it if he moves over toward the third base. But no, he's actually going to try and move out with such a small army. Oh, but the DT is actually move back into the main base. They're going to snipe off that main hatchery. The queens are not close enough to transfuse it either. That right there, that might be the killing blow.
I would just be saying, you bastard, with a smile on my face, but still, like, that War Prism was near death 3 times over in this game, by the way. Like, it's still pretty much near death. Ugh. It's disgusting.
His focus firing it down. So this time, unlike the game number 1, I don't even feel like it's on JonSnow, because he's been making the attempts to kill it. He just hasn't been able to get it.
Yeah, barely escaping every time this queens have finally gotten to tag it. Another hatchery might fall here. I mean, it could be canceled, but it's still not a great feeling.
Oh my God, where's your Overseer, dude? You had one.
That's a good question.
Like, I know he has it. It was at
in the main.
Oh, he didn't have it on his hockey group. Oh, that's painful.
Yeah, that's part of what happened. And it's, of course, still slow, and it's a terrible situation. JonSnow is gonna be hoping that his banelings can work some magic. If he can just make 20 banelings with typical hooks, maybe he's like, please. But against Stalkers, I'd say that's a little bit more difficult to do. If it was Charge Lot High Templars, it'd be like, yeah, it'll happen. But Stalkers, it's not that they're so much amazingly better that we truly have found the secret to PvZ. They aren't, but I think specifically against the whole, oh shit, I wasn't paying attention, I guess banelings kill me, I think they're a little bit better against that.
Oh yeah, let me tell you something. When you have a bunch of charge lots, and there's a bunch of banelings that come forward, yeah, you actually do have to pay attention, because you can throw away really big leads with just zealots. But Stalkers, they just absorb that damage a little bit better. Even just being bigger units, the damage doesn't spread out as much.
Yeah, you're not wrong. So, Robbie, I think, has one chance to screw this up, and that would be to run into banelings face first. Loses War Prism, still not that bad. Loses half of his army, still not that bad. Loses all of his army, can't recall the Immortals, then that's terrible enough. JonSnow knows it's his last game. It is the first qualifier, so it's certainly not his last chance to qualify, but you don't tap out of the final game, even when things look really terrible.
Yeah, and I actually think that Rob is playing this really smart as well. He didn't just try and push in at like 150 supply or something and say like, okay, I have a few Immortals and I can make this work, because JonSnow is exactly the type of player who does not tech up very often. So he's just going to be making Roaches, Lings, and Ravagers. So I like that Rob just says, well, I have time. Let me get up higher tech units and have another distinct advantage over my opponent who's probably staying low tech. I have some time to make this work. And now he pushes across the map. The banelings a few of them are going to be finishing up. He's going up to like 17 or so, maybe like 20s of banelings, but I still think this is just going to be a really, really tough attack for JonSnow to actually hold off, especially since he's getting jumped on before the banelings finish.
Bold blink forward, but he knew the sentries would cover him. That was a little scary, but now he has blink off cooldown, I believe, so going away from banelings. They're in smaller numbers anyways. Disruptor getting a decent shot. Another Disruptor has come forward as well. Immortals still not being taken out. Even supplies not looking so hot for the Zerg. Some probes went down to maybe just long distance mining, but no 5th base for JonSnow as he desperately runs back onto the high ground. Disruptor just wants to get the juicy shot. That would be the way to end it for Robbie. The 3-0 with the Disruptor shot. He's looking for it. He hit it.
Yeah.
He hit it.
I think JonSnow maybe at this point relying a little bit on the disruptor shot, actually hitting some of the stalkers, but the Banelands come rolling on in, and they do surprisingly well versus a lot of the stalkers. Now the Immortals are more exposed, but the Immortals actually just micro back. Most of them managed to survive. They finally just started falling as the stalkers blink back yet again, but JonSnow's army supply, his overall supply, is just falling further and further down. So there's the blink forward. And Robbie Plata is about to qualify for Season 2 of the DreamHack Masters.
A little bit of ease, man. He is getting PVZ right now. Or maybe alternatively, JonSnow doesn't get ZvP. I guess there's always that argument. But now Robbie looked pretty good. Even a little overzealous in that last fight, but it didn't matter. He judged correctly. He could blink aggressively. And that's going to be, I think, one of the,
That's
the
the
final.
last one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the last one for